The person that gets promoted are good at the higher up you get in an organization, the more you need to understand how politics are done within the organization you're in.
Is that the only mistake high achievers might repeat again and again?
I think sometimes it's a little bit like we say being lucky also. I would say visibility is a thing. I truly believe so.
Today, I'm joined by someone who operates on the other side of the table, where careers are not just built, but evaluated, shaped, and sometimes quietly stalled. Jesper has worked across Volvo, Arbe, and now in global leadership and development role, where he has been directly involved in how organizations think about talent, performance, and leadership progression. What makes this conversation interesting is that it doesn't come from consulting, but he works with the people consultant eventually wants to become. So today, we're going to break down what actually drives career growth inside organization, corporate organization, beyond the CV, beyond performance review, and beyond what most people think. You've worked with executive behind closed doors. What would shock most people about how careers actually work?
I have worked with a few executives and our executive management team in my current company as well. What I think most people get a little bit misunderstanding of is that careers don't follow a linear path. It's not like you entered in one position, get another, and it's a predetermined career path to get to the executive level. It's not like that.
Mm.
Perhaps it used to be, I don't know, but it not any longer. I think that is one common misunderstanding, at least, that people think that, okay, the persons in the executive roles, they had a predetermined path in order to get there. If you were, for instance, the CHRO, that you were doing this few predetermined steps or roles before that. But I don't think it works like that any longer.
What is the most common path as you have seen across different executive? You said that it's not linear. How does it look like from inside?
I think it looks very different in different companies. We need to be a little bit humble and say that it doesn't look like one way for everyone. It
Yeah.
doesn't look like one way in each company. It doesn't look like one way within each function. I would say that what is important is that many people have good understanding of the basics of
Mhm.
the role and the basic of the function they are supporting and have tried many different roles.
Mhm. So my audience are consultants or individuals that are already in consulting, individuals that want to get into consulting. And one path for my audience is that to getting into corporate roles. If I want to get back to that question, so you are saying that you can, of course, come from a shiny management consulting to a corporate, start climbing the ladder, but that path is not very clear and it might differ from one corporate to another.
I think that the perks of being like a management consultant is that you get a broad understanding of how companies work, right? So you get
Mm,
a broad understanding and an understanding of what executive looks like for when they make decisions, its financial terms, how do you present, and all of those things. But you never go into depth within an organization. So you need to understand the depth as well. And perhaps
mm.
that's where some might have a little bit of a rush or being impatient is I step into a career and then I expect to get to the next level within the organization right away. But it's also understanding the depth of the organization. So I think
Mm.
management consultants are really good to get into, and it's a good start for sure.
And when you talk about depth, I can assume what you mean by depth, but for my audience to be super clear here, what do you mean the depths of organization?
I mean, for instance, say that you worked within like a management consultant, you understand how you take decisions or what the executive looks for when you make decisions within industries or operations. But
Mm.
then you need to truly also understand the depth of an like an industry or a manufacturing department. How does it work? How does it work on the shop floor? How does it work when the plant managers make decisions? So understand that kind of depth.
If we look at, let's say, an individual who is a high performing individual, want to get into corporate, what is the number one thing that these individuals might get it wrong when they want to transition into a corporate? Is it just the topic of depths?
I think is important to think of is if you are a high performer somewhere, it doesn't mean that you will be it in the new role. It's
Hmm.
so you have given yourself prerequisites and you've done it great in the current job you're in if you're a high performer. But in order to be a high performer in the next role, it might be also a little bit of humbleness and understanding that might not always be the case. And we can use like football as an analogy. Like say that you have been very good football player in one team, you scored a lot of goals, you get traded to another team. You have a new coach, you have a new
Mm-hmm.
system, you have a new way of playing, you have new teammates. It doesn't always equal success. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's the same within business. And be a little bit humble and not to put too much pressure. If it doesn't work for you the first year, it doesn't mean it is not going to work later on. It might
Mm-hmm.
be a time to adapt. You might need to adapt to the new system, a new culture, the new management, the new way of making decisions, and the new ways of working. So I think that
Okay.
is important not to get down if you're not high performer right away, if you don't get the promotion you were aiming for in the first year or something like that. Be a little bit patient, I think.
I think patience is something that I have hear from a lot of my clients that I work with that they want to get into consulting, that this is something that they would like to work on it. And in consulting, things move fast. Maybe that is not the strongest trait that consultant have. You talked about like the time it takes to start getting momentum in a corporate. So now I'm thinking about getting to consulting is a right choice if the idea is to climb the ladder in corporate. So thinking about an individual that comes from consulting and entering into a corporate and another individuals that start in corporate, which sort of scenario here would be easier to climb the ladder? If you start in corporate or if you start with consulting and then come into corporate?
It depends on so many variables that come into play here, right? So it depends on the company, it depends on the individuals, it depends on what you've done within the company. But if you look at consulting, I think what gives an extra perk in those cases sometimes is that you get an early exposure on how decisions are made within the top of a company. That you understand the profit and loss, you understand that it matters. If you start in a big company, it's not always that you get that exposure in an early stage of your career. So I think that is one perk of consulting. The other perk of starting within a company is that you get to understand the basics, as we mentioned earlier, that you understand
Mhm.
the basic of what you're doing, you understand the basic of the organization. And I think that is very important when you come up to the executive roles, because in those positions you take decisions that seems okay at the top, but then has a little bit unknown consequences at the very end if you don't know what happens at the actual shop floor within an industry and so on. So I think that depends on different parts. Back to the original question, it's not one career path, it's many different ways here. And I
Mm,
think, especially in the current situation where we constantly reorganize new structures every week, almost sometimes from time to time, it feels like. So I
mm,
think what you can focus on is always learning new things. And that
mhm,
is one thing I think you get from management consultant is that you learn many different industries. So if you can pick up the things that they do well and you reflect on that, that's something you can bring to whatever company you start in later on, because they are usually worked in one way and continue working in that kind of structure that they are used to. But if you can
mhm,
bring that outside perspective in, I think that is something that would be valuable in many cases.
mm, mm, mm,
But that
mm.
requires reflection also. So it's not always that an experience equals that you can do it later on. An experience need to have reflection in order to learn and grow. So yeah.
Mhm, mhm. I think those are very important topics that anyone needs to have in mind, no matter which path they start, whether that's consulting or corporate. I think learning is the key here. And now I want to dive into one topic that I have heard a lot from my clients. They talk about promotion. This promotion is a big thing for consultants, like to go
Mm.
from analyst to consultant, manager, partner. And I think that perhaps that mindset also reflects when they start in a new role in corporates. The question that I get, like, what is the character and traits of that individual who get promotion faster than other, like having that express or expedited path to get promotion? Is it important that individual is extremely smart, or is it important that individual has political character that is visible in the organization? What type of character is most prone to get promotion in corporate?
I think it's different in different cultures. I think in different companies. I think the person that gets promoted are good at adapting to the company culture and sees what is being promoted. So what is promoted and valued in one company is not always valued in another company. I think that persons that get that feeling and understanding of how do I act within this company in order to show progress or show that I'm valuable or show that I deliver are the ones that get promotions. And
Mhm.
I think it's also back to being a little bit patient and not just chasing a new position, but focusing on what can I deliver within this current role. So it's about delivering the work that you're in and doing that well, and perhaps taking that to the next level. I think those persons are often the ones that get promoted that do well in the current role and perhaps find a new solution to something, a new way of doing something, a new process, or take away something that makes it more efficient. I think those are the persons that gets a little bit seen within an organization. And
Mhm.
in most of the companies I worked in, it's very important that you can collaborate with others. So it's not a one-man show or one-woman show. It's about collaboration. It's about understanding your stakeholders. And as you said, Ramin, it's political savviness. I think the higher up you get in an organization, the more you need to understand how politics are done within the organization you're in.
So it's a multifaceted sort of career path. Of course, you need to deliver, and at the same time, you need to layer that nuance of getting connected with people, reading the room, understanding the culture.
I wish I could say it requires an IQ level of 130 and then you're set, but it doesn't work like that. And I think it's good also because it is different in different companies, and it's also different depending on perhaps the manager you get. It's a little bit about building the trust with your manager and getting her or him to support you and like advocate you in career paths and so on. So it's a lot of things that comes into play, but you need to focus on what you can control. And what you can control is the current role you're in, right? And do that well.
So to flesh this out really, because this is a very interesting topic for many of my audience and clients, we try to look at it how to progress or how to get promotion. But if you put it at the other side of extreme, like what's something that feel like performance, but actually doesn't matter?
I think sometimes people tend to see it as a little bit, like I said, a one-man show or one-woman show, or something like that, that you deliver results very quickly, but it comes to the expense of others, right? That it
Mhm,
comes that you burn some bridges, that you don't learn how to collaborate. So it could look good at start because you get the results done. But at the end, it's about how you collaborate with others as well. So I think that is
mhm.
one common pitfall that you may get into, that you deliver the results, but you actually end up being seen as someone that cannot collaborate.
So now you open up another door in my head, and that is performance versus perception. So, how much of career growth is actually performance versus perception?
Perhaps in some, like the more junior roles, it's more you and the delivery you do. But the more executive you become, the more it is about collaborating with others. It's about the results together. So if you work within HR, it's often a collaboration with finance and with other teams as well. In order to get the results, you need to have that kind of understanding and collaboration with others.
Mm.
So I would say that comes first to be able to collaborate well in order to build something good together.
So, it means that someone might do a great job, but if they are not actually doing what you said, the other thing, which is that culture, perception, that might come at the expense of not getting promoted.
To some extent, yes, I think so. And especially the more senior you are, the harder it will be just to deliver your results within your area. You need to be able to collaborate. You need to be able to see the holistic view of how your performance influence others. And so it doesn't end up being a sub-optimization that you do your work really well, but it comes to the expense of another department, for instance, or another team.
Mm. But is there any element when we are looking at this concept of collaboration and culture, how much of this topic is about being visible? Like, is it important to be visible or just being a collaborative individual, getting the culture, that suffice to get promotion or visibility is a thing?
I would say visibility is a thing. I truly believe it is because I would say in best areas, always the one that delivers the work and collaborate gets seen and get promoted. But being visible and doing some of these kind of key projects within an organization will help. So I think it's good to think of how can I collaborate with people? How can I get into those projects and support in projects and do a little bit outside of my current scope, perhaps step into a project and support. It's usually a good thing to become visible because in that case you get seen not only within your perhaps domain or function, others might see you as well. If you do the collaboration well and you do it with others and you do it in projects, you get seen.
In my head, I see an individuals that follow your recommendations here, get into a corporate high performer. They've done everything by the book. And now, if we look at it from the lens of executive, is what we discussed the only thing that the executive usually evaluate when they're looking actually for talent?
I think it depends so much on different companies, right? So each company has their own things that they look for, and each company values different things. So some put collaboration extremely high, some put it a little bit less. But I think in order to be in the executive teams later on, you need to have a holistic view, an enterprise judgment, where it's not just your function that matters. So how can I take decisions that matter the best for the company overall? I think that is one trait that is important to have. And to be able to engage with others and create movements for others without having like a mandate or an authority to do it, which you get if you do a lot of project leading. You don't have the authority, perhaps, as if you're a manager, you don't have the same authority, but you can motivate and you can lead people and get them to deliver. I think that is also something that you look at. The more senior you get, it's the more strategic you should become. So you can be the more junior, so usual operational, and then tactical, and then strategical. But
Mhm.
you cannot just be strategical. You need to be able to deliver some results as well. So that kind of balance is important, I think, to balance between strategic and operational, and make sure that you have a few short-term wins or that you deliver some output and not just visionary strategic thinking.
And that's the signal that summarize the signals that someone says this individual is a leadership material.
Yeah, I think so. And many cases, it's been that the person that delivers the work best within a team gets the promotion to become a leader. I
Mhm.
think because we have had many cases within larger organization, the only career path has been through managerial positions that you climb the organizational ladder by getting more seniority as a leader. Hopefully, and we're talking about that within my organization, how can we create these career paths that doesn't need to be a managerial career path or a leadership career path? Because not everybody wants to be a leader and not everybody should be a leader. It requires you to be a little bit curious about people, wanted to work with people, wanted to develop employees, and so on. And that requires that you have the passion for it in order to be good at it. And not everybody wants that. Some would like just to get the promotion and influence the decision making without being leaders. And I think we need to have both those career paths within a larger organization. And for someone coming from consultant and talking about career paths, I think it's important to think of, do I want to become a manager or do I want to do something else?
So now going back to the consultant profile that we have and we are discussing all the time here in this conversation, if a consultant now probably have heard what we discussed, is there anything that a consultant that enter a corporate might overvalue or undervalue when they want to getting into a corporate?
What is important is to think about the company culture you step into and understanding of how that reflects with your own values. Because if the higher up you get, if you want to climb the leadership ladder, you need to be aligned with those values of what the company promotes. So if you're a person that doesn't care that much about people and then you get into a very people oriented organization, I think you will have some conflicts with yourself.
Right.
And the way around as well. If you enter to a very people-centric organization and you don't care about people, you will find yourself in perhaps some internal conflicts. I think that
Mhm.
is something to really think about when you talk about promotion and so on. Is this a company that you would like to get promoted in and stand for those kind of values that they show?
That takes me to my next question. Is that the only mistake high achievers might repeat again and again if you have worked with high achievers? Individuals that are willing to grow, but they cannot grow or they feel stuck at some mid level position.
I think sometimes it's a little bit like we say, being lucky also, that you enter to a position where positions get created, somebody leaves, you can enter to a position and the person just got promotion in the next step that you were thinking about. So, and that person stays for 10 years within that position or 5 years. It doesn't mean that you're doing a bad job, that you don't get a promotion. It means that it is what it is. You were not that lucky in that case. So people shouldn't be that afraid of stepping outside of your current function, perhaps, or getting experience similar to the one that you have, but in a new scope. So if you work with finance, perhaps you can step into technology, or if you work in R&D, you can do some manufacturing. So widening the perspective and getting more and more experience, I think it's something that you can think of if you feel that you're stuck in that kind of environment, or if you're stuck in the role and don't get the promotion that you feel that you deserve.
So what you're saying that continue the learning trajectory, whether that's vertical or horizontal, as long as you learn and increase the depths of understanding in that organization, it will help you down the line.
Absolutely. I think learning, like learning agility, is something that we talk about, and I think it's very important that you show that you are able to learn. And if you're aiming for executive position, it's only good that you understand the whole business, no matter what function you represent in the executive management team. So that you
Mm.
understand, if you work within HR, for instance, that you understand how it works within quality, or that you understand how it works within R&D. So it's always good to have that.
So I'm thinking here that an individual get into an organization, they start learning, they're patient, and they are on the trajectory to become a leader. Eventually, this person become a leader, but what would be the difficulty of a leadership role that might not be felt when you are not a leader?
I think becoming a leader in your first leadership role is often very tough. It's more understanding that it's not about just you delivering the role you would like to do. It's also about leading others
Mhm,
and how you get people to grow. And that is one common mistake I have seen a few times when you have a high performer stepping into a leadership role within a team that they know pretty well, or within a scope that they know very well, is that they
mhm,
are a little bit too controlling, or they
mhm.
end up doing everything themselves.
Right.
And or demanding, or saying, I would like this to be delivered in this way, because that person know perhaps the best way of doing it, but doing it the best way this time doesn't mean that that grows the persons that you're supporting as a leader for the next time. So in that case, it's about balancing, okay, my expectations are this side. The person that delivered might have done it differently in this area, and be okay with that, because that is what will develop that person further. And that is your role as a leader, is to develop results and employees. Often it comes, if you start developing your employees, you will get the results that you're aiming for. If you start with just focusing on the results, you might get some short-term wins, but in the long haul, you will not get the team to develop, and you will not get them to do things by themselves. You will not get that motivational team. They will just be sitting and waiting for your instructions. And that will lead you to become the bottleneck, and not the
Mhm,
quality decisions that you might want to have later on. So I think that
mhm.
is one common mistake, and not truly understanding how should I balance that from knowing what I would like it to be, and then allowing it to be not exactly how I wanted it to be, but that develops the employees that I have in my team.
Very interesting. Is there any one belief that you have thought about careers which is just wrong?
I think it's very important to think about why you would like to have a certain promotion, and why is that important, and if to get a certain promotion is what you're aiming for, is it something else that you would like to achieve within your work life, so to say? Like, is it the continuous learning and so on? Because I think if you focus on the process, the results will come, instead of focusing on the results all the time, getting the promotion. So if you focus on the process of getting job done, doing it well, and making sure that you learn new things and building your uh, the ability to do new tasks, I think you will get the promotions as it comes. But also not be afraid of saying what you would like to achieve, or saying that things, but not focus only on that promotion. I don't think
Mm.
that will lead you to getting the promotion at the end. The end goal matters, of course, but it's what you put first, I think. It's not saying that it doesn't matter. It's just that focusing on the process. It's a little bit when you play sports. It's not about always focusing, okay, at the each game is very important, but it's about focusing on how do we play this game well? How do we train in order to get the results we would like in that game?
Mhm.
So focusing on those parts. And in business, it means I would say, okay, how can I learn new things? How can I deliver these tasks very well? How do I do my role and perhaps show a little bit more? And
Right.
that will lead to that results or the ambition level that you have. So it's not about lowering your expectations, it's about understanding, okay, how do I get there?
So my last question, is there anyone that you want me to invite as a guest for the next time to talk about careers and career development?
Personally, I'm always interested in leadership and executive leadership mindset. So if you want to go down that path and continue that discussions on how are decisions made or what are the obstacles that executives often face, I think an executive coach named Liz Ryder is an interesting person if you want to go down and develop that kind of thinking together with your audience.
Definitely. I try to reach out to Liz if possible. Thank you,
Thank you,
Jesper.
Dami.